Welcome in, everybody. Is your host, Blake Ruffino with AYS Sports. We're here today from Service Hawk Digital Media. Soar above the competition with Service Hawk Digital, expert marketing for HVAC, electrical, and generator pros. Look, I know I own a business. A lot of you out there own businesses. If you want growth, you need to get over to Service Hawk Digital. We are here, not live. We're here recording, but we are here in the Service Hawk Digital studios. Glad to be here with our good guys, Lee and Justin, and the entire crew. We're going to continue to do these every single week. We're going to continue to come to our good friends over at Service Hawk. Maybe have something really special in store for next week when LSU goes on the road to Florida. Today, we're going to talk about three big things. So when we've been coming over here, we've been kind of breaking down in more detail keys to victory, what LSU needs to do to win against their opponent this week. We talked about it with A&M. Well, you didn't accomplish 2 out of the 3. You went into a bye week, and now we're going into Alabama, and you're going to have to accomplish all 3 of these things if you want to come out Saturday with a win. Number one, listen, I think that what's not being talked about enough is what LSU is going to be able to do in getting pressure after Jalen Milroe. Now, I know that we've talked about Milroe running. We've seen Marcel Reed. We've seen Lenore Sellers and other guys that are very mobile be able to beat LSU on a consistent basis. And I know that that's a very big concern going into this game. But I don't think what's being talked about enough is that Alabama's offensive line and Alabama offensively has been very bad in moments protecting Jalen Milroe, especially in the pass game, because they're 86th in the country. 86th in the country in pressure rate. They're 82nd in the country in sacks allowed. LSU, the one thing that they do very, very, very well on a consistent basis is get after the quarterback. They're 6th in the country in sacks. Braden Swinson has been a godsend when it comes to pass rush. You've been able to do multiple different things with your interior. Guys like JVR Suggs has been really good. He's a really slippery pass rusher, and he's been able to do a lot of really good things. I don't think it's talked about enough right now going into this game for one reason, is because a lot of people think that Milroe, and it's true and honest, but that Milroe can run and he can escape. But he's been able to run and escape against these other teams when they've been allowing sacks all season long. I'm really interested to see how Blake Baker contains in the pass rush. What do I mean? I do think Blake Baker, who's sent a lot of pressure from the edges, whether it be Major Burns or whether it be Braden Swinson, Whit Weeks, whoever it may be, you're going to have to do that in containing Jalen Milroe and make sure that your interior defensive line is able to be good enough in containing him that he does not scramble through up the middle along with your linebackers. But look, one thing that I think that LSU can definitely capitalize on here and that's not being talked enough about is I don't think that their right tackle, Elijah Pritchett, has been good. If you put Braden Swinson on him, I do think that Swinson can really get after Jalen Milroe. I do think that they have been much better on the left side of their offensive line with Proctor and Booker and those guys. But I look at Alabama as an offensive and as a whole. I think the right side of their offensive line has had massive issues. And I think that you can get very creative when you're going after Jalen Milroe. Now, Milroe does not like pressure in his face. And when you look at the pressure rates and times that they've gotten pressure in his face, it's when he's been at his worst. So I look at this as a whole and say, like, look, we talked about Milroe run game. We've talked about Alabama being more consistent. The one thing that we got to talk about more, and I think that where LSU is going to have massive amounts of success, is going to be getting after Jalen Milroe. The only thing that worries me is that I do think that you're going to send pressure. I do think that you're going to send heat after him. But when you do that, you got to make sure that either you, number one, you get him down and you get the sack, or number two, that you can limit how much he is scrambling because he can bust one off on you. If I had to look at this game as a whole and look at this specific area, I'm looking at this and saying to myself, I think LSU, if LSU gets to Milroe more than twice, like if they can get there twice or even more, LSU is going to win this game. Now, I think guys like Jackson Dart, who is very mobile, LSU was able to get after. Now, he's not the same athlete as Jalen Milroe, and I get that. But I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. Braden Swinson's going to have a big game. And I thought at times in the second half, and it's not necessarily his fault, that he was kind of taken out of the defensive game plan and was not able to make plays. He is a pass rusher. I do think Kalen DeBoer is going to want to come in here and throw the football a little bit. So number 4 is going to have to be really big. Another key contributor in this is going to be Savion Jones. Look, I do think that Savion Jones, I'm not going to say that Savion Jones is going to have a big game, but he's going against probably and arguably one of the best left guards or guards in general in all of the SEC, if not all the country, and Tyler Booker on a lot of these passing downs. He's just got to be able to create havoc. He's got to be able to create situations where even if he can't get to the quarterback, that he's got to be able to put pressure on Milroe. We're not talking about it enough. I'm telling you, if you can get after him, that's where Milroe makes mistakes and makes turnovers. I think that is going to be your number one, probably, and more than likely key to victory. Look, we talk about this. We've been at it's interesting. We've been at Service Hawk Digital for 3 weeks here and doing these videos. And every single time that you and I talk, and I think it's because when we talk about this, it's such a big deal. You gotta find ways to run the football or have extended running game. Guys, you're 111th in the country in rushing offense. And I don't think that there is I refuse to believe at the current moment that you can't run the football more consistently. I refuse to believe it. I know that people are saying the interior offensive line has been bad. I know a lot of people have been saying that there have been issues with, center and guard play. That can be fine and dandy, but you can run the football in much other different ways. You know what's interesting? I'm going to make you think about this. Caden Durham, the freshman running back for LSU, has had a lot of big plays this year. He's had a lot of spark plays for you this year. Where have those runs come at mostly? They've come on the outside. And why you're trying to get Caden Durham, who's a freshman back, who's probably he's just not ready to be an every down back running between the tackles. Why are you doing that to him? When I look at this LSU run game, I go to Josh Williams, I go to Caleb Jackson and say, listen, it's very simple, it's very easy. We got to do everything we can to get to 4 yards per carry. This is going to be a tough game. It's going to be a brutal game. But you're going to have to find ways and be more creative in the run game. Get runs on the outside. Stop calling zone reads with a quarterback who's so scared that to run the ball that teams are completely scheming up against you that number 13 is not going to run. I refuse to believe at the current moment that you can't run the football. And I think that you are going to have success. Bama is 64th in the country in run defense. Here's where I sit at the current moment at where we're at. When I look at LSU and Bama and I look at you trying to run the football, if Vandy can line up and do it, so should you. You should be able to line up and run the football. And I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying that you're going to be, Clyde, or you're going to have a Clyde Edwards-Helaire type of performance, or you're going to see Leonard Fournette bust loose, or Darius Geis, or whoever the great running backs of old at LSU have been. You got to be sustained in the running game and take pressure off of DeGarrett Nussmeier, because if you can't do that, guys, you're going to lose. All of your playoff aspirations are out the window. Now, look, we talked about this week ad nauseum. You have a really good chance. You have a very, very good chance that you can make a playoff, right? You have a very, very good chance that once you get past this game, you're going to be favored against Florida on the road. You're going to be favored against Vandy. You're going to be favored against Oklahoma. And when I look at this run game, if you can't find it this week, you're not going to find it at all. And look, they're going to do everything in their power to play man-to-man coverage and put 6 guys in the box and say, well, if you can't run it, we're going to put guys out in coverage. So it's everybody's done to you. So the number one thing that you got to do offensively to help out Nussmeier and start helping alleviate these turnovers is you got to find ways to run. I am sick and tired of looking at this team and finding this team and seeing this team try to run the ball up the middle as nauseating as it is. If you can't be more creative in the running game, not only do you not deserve to win this game, you also don't deserve to be in the playoff. Now, I'm going to remind a lot of you, in case you forgot about this, there's a new, and you all know this part, there's a new format of the college football playoff. There's 12 teams in the college football playoff. But not only is there a new format, guys, there's an estimated that the national champion of college football this year from extra TV revenue is slated to make around $60 million in TV revenue money. Guys, you're worried about money. You're worried about all these different things. You're worried about NIL. You're worried about the collective. You're worried about all these things. Winning can help you solve some of those issues. Revenue sharing for players is not here yet. So going into this game, going into this matchup versus Alabama, you're going to have to find ways. Be creative. I hope I said this earlier in the week. I'm going to talk about this more tonight on the live show. I think Brian Kelly's been very involved in the run game this week. I think it's been the number one focus with him and Brad Davis and Joe Sloan. Actually, I'm not even thinking. I know that it has been. I think all three of them have been trying to find ways and creative ways to get this running game going. If Vanderbilt can line up and run the football, you have no business looking me in the face or any fan being or seeing their favorite team in LSU not being able to run the football. It is a fundamental principle that you got to have established. You do not win football games in the SEC if you can't run the football. That's the bottom line. And no, not because Stone Cold said so. If you're a 90s baby or a wrestling fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. All right, a couple more here. Look, I think that this was interesting. We talked about this with Carter this week, and I think it's the same. When I look at LSU's wide receiver core as a whole versus Alabama's DBs, I think that this is the best unit that Bama has seen all year from a passing attack. I mean, I'm trying to think, is Diego Pavia the best quarterback that they've seen so far this year? I don't know if that's true or not, but it was definitely the most consistent. Is Carson Beck, who's had 9 turnovers in 3 games against ranked opponents this year. I shouldn't say ranked opponents, but against Florida, Texas, and obviously Alabama, the team that we're playing this week. I went back and watched the Georgia game from earlier in the season versus Bama, specifically in the second half of what Georgia was doing. Now, they ran a lot of verts. They ran they were in a lot of situations where they ran a lot of air raid principles, a lot of the same stuff that you do. They want to go deep. They want to get the ball out fast. Carson Beck was 27 of 50 for 439 yards and 3 touchdowns with 3 picks. Because you have a better receiving core than them. You have a better offensive line protecting the quarterback than them. I know that Alabama each week has gotten better, but this is going to be the ultimate test of how much have they gotten better. South Carolina was able to throw the football in this unit with Lenora Sellers. Literally one of the worst teams in the SEC throwing the football is South Carolina, and they were able to move the ball down the field. Now, what did those two teams do, whether it be Georgia in the second half or whether it be South Carolina? They didn't turn the ball over. They did not turn the ball over. They accomplished what they needed to accomplish. They executed what they needed to execute. They did what they needed to do every single passing down. The second half for Carson Beck was a clinic. Now, we can look at Carson Beck and say that the 3 interceptions were bad, and guys, it was horrific. There's nothing that Halloween. We just got done with Halloween. There's nothing you would have seen in a scary face of Halloween that was as scary as Carson Beck's first half when he threw 3 picks. But the second half, guys, he throws for 331 yards and 3 touchdowns to 2 wide receivers that are not better than the ones that you have at the current moment with Kyron Lacey, Aaron Anderson, C.J. Daniels, and Chris Hilton, and with Mason Taylor at tight end. Mason's got to get involved here. I think you can attack him there. I don't think that they figured things out. Even Vandy was throwing the ball on them, and Vandy is not a good team at throwing the football. When I look at Vandy, let's look at Vandy real quick. I think I have their stats here of what they do or what they have done this year. Let me find it. So bear with me here. Yeah, Vandy's in the 90s. Yeah, there it is. Vandy's in the 90s in passing offense this year. If they can have success, there's no reason that you should not be able to. But the big thing that we talked about that too, Alabama was able to force Carson Beck into 3 first-half turnovers, mainly due to the fact that Carson Beck made bad decisions, like very boneheaded bad decisions. Now, you can say to me, well, Blake Garrett makes bad decisions too, and you're right, he does. He makes very bad decisions. But in the second half, he eliminated those. And as the game continued to go on, as the game continued to progress on, he was finding wide open one-on-one receivers, and they were able to make plays. I think not only can you run the football, but I don't trust in that secondary. They got a lot of talent, But schematically, I think that you're going to be able to get over on them. But you can't force bad passes. You cannot give them the football and turn the football over. Let's talk about turnovers. Guys, if you have averaged, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, you have averaged 3 total turnovers a game in the last month. So the last 4 games that you've played, you have averaged 3 total turnovers. If that does not get better, Bama's going to come in here and beat you. Now, you probably think that I've said that multiple times, I'm being negative. I'm not being negative. I'm being realistic. You know where you want to go. I know where you want to go and all that. And everybody knows the goals and aspirations that you have. But in the last month, you have turned the ball over 3 times. If that continues, if that legitimately continues, not only are you not going to be in a playoff picture, not only are you not going to be in Atlanta for the SEC championship game, which, by the way, if you went out, you are there. But if you do not find a way to play cleaner football, because we're going to be sitting here on New Year's Day celebrating, hey, you'll be counting down 3, 2, 1, all the confetti and lights and poppers go off, fireworks go off. Maybe you're hugging your significant other, and in the back of your mind, you'll be thinking, we're going to the damn Cheez-It Bowl tomorrow. You're not going to be where you want to be. It's funny. I was telling my wife this. She kind of got mad at me this morning when I was like, she goes, can you stop talking about the Cheez-It Bowl? If you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, turnovers have got to be eliminated. I don't care where they're coming from, who they're coming from, no matter what. You got to find a way to not do it. Stop making the bad mistakes. If you make a bad throw, I would rather Nussmeier throw a bad pass and they get picked off than just making bad decisions and lobbing the ball up and it getting picked off. 2 more things here. Look, number 4, I said 3 things, but we'll go to 5 here. Number 4, I think you. What do you mean? What do you mean me? Guys, Brian Kelly is 13-0 at night in Tiger Stadium while he's been at LSU. He has only lost 1 game at LSU in Tiger Stadium, that coming in year 1 at 11 a.m. kickoff versus Tennessee, and they were a better football team than you. And quite honestly, it was not an easy day for them either. Offensively, it was Hendon Hooker's worst game of his entire year outside of that South Carolina game where he got hurt. I think that Louisiana as a culture, LSU as a place, I think that the ramifications of this game. This has been a rivalry built over the last 20 years. It's interesting. I was like 14 or 15 when Nick Saban took over the University of Alabama as their head coach. So for the last 20 years, last 2 decades, we have been in a situation where our former coach was on another team, leading them to a dynasty, leading them to national championships, and now he's not there. And I think this game is a good barometer for where you're at. And I feel the tension that you've been bringing. I feel the tension of what you've been doing and where you're coming from. Guys, this is I got to be real. It's the biggest game in the Brian Kelly era. I know that a couple of weeks ago we talked about that being Ole Miss, and it was at the time. But now if you win this game, and I know that the fan base is going to be there, and the fan base is going to be loud, and it's going to be rocking in Tiger Stadium. And I know that the weather is going to be somewhat moderately better than what we initially thought in the beginning of the week. By the way, you can go to our YouTube channel. We talked with Dr. GeauxTigers from WBRZ, the chief meteorologist there, and he thinks it's going to be fine. Maybe some early morning showers, but other than that we're going to be fine. Guys, you got to be loud. You got to be raucous. This team, Alabama, is 129th in the country in penalty yards. They're 129th in the country in penalties as a whole. Man, if you're just you and that place is rocking, I think the same thing what happened in 22 is going to happen again. I think you're going to stay around with them. I think late you're going to be able to make some scores and get some touchdowns and win this football game. Guys, I think from top to bottom, you're a better football team than they are. Top to bottom, you're a better football team. They still lost 30 players to the portal. The thing that worries me is that if Alabama gets out to an early lead, that the stadium kind of gets a little quiet. But just be you. Last but not least, let's get to this. as we're kind of wrapping up here. Again, we're here with in the Service Hawk Digital studio. I'm very glad to be here with our good guys Lee and Justin and everybody. Soar above the competition with Service Hawk Digital, expert marketing, HVAC, electrical and generator pros. Guys, these guys are literally, I'm sitting here in their office. I mean, they're killing it right now. They're killing it. Everything that they're doing, business growth. If you own a business, you need to call them. You need to get in touch with them. Service Hawk Digital Media. Love being here at their studio. Last but not least, guys, I think that there's one thing that I have not mentioned the entire week, and it's been on purpose because I wanted to mention it on Thursday. I think that there is a big time matchup in reference to Nick Sheridan, the the OC for Alabama versus Blake Baker. I think Blake is going to be able to do some creative things on third down. Alabama has vastly struggled on third down. Alabama is 66th in the country in third down conversion rate. And not only that, guys, they're dead last in the country when it's 3rd and 6 plus and trying to convert first downs. When you make Jalen Milroe have to sit in the pocket and throw the football, they are dead last in the country in converting it. So what does that mean? That means on first and second down, you got to make tackles in big plays. When you're that bad, 3rd and 6 plus, you're dead last in the SEC. You're dead last in the country in third down conversions. Guys, if it's 3rd and 6 plus and LSU is giving up first downs, that will be out of the norm of what we've seen from Alabama this year with Jalen Milroe. What does worry me is that now that he's a little bit healthier, meaning Milroe, is he going to take off? Is he going to run? Is he going to try to establish and get first downs? Again, would be out of the norm. I think that you've given Blake Baker and this defensive staff with Bo Davis and Kevin Peoples 2 weeks to prepare. And I think that from a Nick Sheridan and Alabama offensive standpoint to your defensive coordinator and your defensive standpoint, I think that you have the better overall staff. And I think that in games like this, when everything is so close, the littlest things matter. And I think that when I look at this third down conversion rate of them being dead last at 3rd and 6 plus, you got to be excellent on first and second down and get them in those situations. So what does that mean too? And I think as a whole, when Milroe is forced to be in the pocket and throw the football, that's when Bama's lost games. Here's the interesting thing. I looked this up. We'll talk about this more tonight. When Jalen Milroe is the quarterback and he has had to sit in the pocket and he's had more 3rd and 6 plus conversions on third down. Think about this. The games that he had the most 3rd and 6 plus conversions, all of them were losses. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Michigan. You think about that Michigan game from the playoffs last year. They got after him. They got to him. They sacked him. That was a big deal. Oh, and by the way, Texas. So all 4 of the losses, that Bama had as Jalen Milroe as the quarterback, whether it be Saban or DeBoer, what did they all have in common? Now, the only win that they really do have is South Carolina, but that was barely. The one thing that all of them have in common is simple. They made him sit in the pocket and throw the football and beat them by throwing the ball. So I think that I don't want to say that this game is simple in beating them. The philosophy is simple in what you need to do. All right.